Should we do the housekeeping? Chris, is that okay?
Yeah, please.
So welcome everyone to today's Legal Service Trust Fund Commission Executive Committee meeting. And Dennis is going to be doing our housekeeping today.
Great. Welcome committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Legal Service Trust Fund Commission Executive Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us. We are using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you'd like to make a comment during the meeting, please use the raise hand feature. To use the raise hand feature by phone, dial *9 on your phone's dial pad to raise your hand, and to do the same to lower your hand. Please utilize this tool to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the discussion. All committee meetings will be recorded and posted to the State Bar website. A friendly reminder that this is a video conference and to please be aware of your surroundings behind you.
Great, thank you, sir. Can we please do roll?
Yes. Schreiber.
Here.
Al-Sarraf.
Here.
Connolly.
Here.
Great, we have quorum. Let me do the liaisons. I don't see Selena on. I don't see Bonnie. And so Laura, are you attending for Bonnie today?
Yes.
Or on behalf of
Bonnie and Melanie, they're both traveling and out of the office.
Okay, great. And then State Bar staff, I see Dennis, Danielle.
Yep, here.
Okay, great. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you for public comments.
Yeah, is there any member of the public that would like to be heard at this time?
I don't see any public member. Wait, hold on. Oh, wait, Selena's here. Maybe promote Selena. And then the other member is a staff member. And Danielle, I don't know, do you want to promote Mikey because he's on the scoring team or?
He said he doesn't need to be a panelist. We chatted about it. He's fine as a participant for now.
So no public comments, Chris.
Okay.
Nobody else from the public.
Okay, shall we approve the meeting minutes from the last go round here?
Sure, I can make a motion.
Thank you, Erica.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do roll call.
We're almost there just by the motions.
Okay, great. I'll do roll calls. Al-Sarraf.
Yes.
Connolly.
Yes.
Schreiber.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes.
Okay, the heart of our awards here. So let's get to it. Let me hand it on over to Danielle.
Perfect. And I will share my screen and get us going. So welcome everybody. Today, our goal in the first agenda item is to recommend 2023-2025 Consumer Debt Grant Award amounts. We will go through some quick background reminders of kind of how we got here. And then the meat of it, we'll be talking about the review process, the scores that the scoring team came up with, as well as funding recommendations, and then kind of what that means from a policy standpoint, and then open the floor for discussion if you all feel any changes need to be made, and then there's a resolution for your consideration at the end. So to start, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Are you all still, there we go. I was moving Zoom and messed with settings I didn't mean to. Can you all still see the slides okay? Great. Okay. So as a reminder, the consumer debt grants are coming to the Judicial Council and the State Bar through the Budget Act of 2022, which allocated $15 million for grants to QLSPs and support centers to provide civil legal services for indigent persons related to consumer debt matters affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Of that $15 million, up to 5% is available for State Bar and Judicial Council administrative costs, which leaves $14.25 million available for a competitive grant process. The Budget Act states that these grant funds may not be used to supplant existing resources, and the Budget Act also has a spend down date of December 31, 2025. The Budget Act notably did not define what consumer debt matters affected by the COVID-19 pandemic means. And so that was discussed and approved as part of the RFP, a request for proposal by this committee back in September. And that RFP provided the following list of permissible activities. Consumer debt grant funds may be used to provide civil legal services related to debt collection, wage garnishment, bank account levy defense, financial abuse, protection against unfair debt collection, protection against unfair and predatory lending and consumer scams, credit reporting and discrimination, bankruptcy, and other debt matters, including those related to student loans, auto loans, credit cards, and medical debt. And so, kind of taken together, what that means for the grant parameters, this funding opportunity was available to all IOLTA eligible QLSPs and support centers. And funds must be used, again, to provide those civil legal services related to consumer debt matters affected by the pandemic, as defined in the RFP. Because of that spend down date of December 2025, this is a 3-year grant period from January 1, 2023 through December of 2025. And the budget language requires that these funds be used only to serve indigent Californians. So next, just to remind you, this committee also approved the scoring rubric as part of the RFP, or request for proposal. And that RFP provided guidance for each criterion of the scoring rubric. Staff also proposed in that RFP definitions for not addressed, below, meets, and exceeds expectations on those different rubric criterion. And as a reminder, the rubric is a tool to guide the scoring team and the committee's evaluations of the submitted proposals, but a high score does not necessarily guarantee funding. Both the scoring team and this committee, and ultimately the commission, may exercise discretion in recommending awards that distribute grants statewide, and also strive for a diversity of interventions or legal services. And this is the scoring rubric as you all approved it earlier this fall. The categories are project impact and strategies, administration, serves rural populations, serves underserved populations. Both of these were requirements of the Budget Act that it give preference to projects that served rural and underserved communities. Project evaluation, and then there's a special consideration row that would award additional points to projects that were replicable, sustainable after the grant period, and or provide consumer debt legal services that promote the long-term economic health and stability of individuals served. Are there any questions? I can pause for just a moment before we jump into the review process. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I will keep going. So we received 30 applications seeking about $22.5 million in funding combined. 26 of those were from QLSPs and 4 were from support centers. This committee delegated authority to a scoring team to score all of those proposals. And that scoring team was comprised of 2 state bar staff and 2 commissioners. In the list, I put the commissioners first, so apologies, but the 2 commissioners here were Erica and Catherine Blakemore. And then the 2 staff members were myself and Michael or Mikey Chong, who's also available kind of on hand at this meeting. And we met 6 times to review the proposals, score them all, and then come up with funding recommendations for each of those that are ultimately being recommended for funding today. So again, that 4-person scoring team arrived at a consensus score for every single proposal. We gave them to a score that we agreed on as a group. The highest score was 89 out of a possible 100 points. The lowest score was 52, and the average was 71. The scoring team is recommending that this committee recommend to the commission funding 20 of the 22 highest scoring proposals. The 2 that are not being recommended are from East Bay Community Law Center and Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights. And unfortunately, both of those proposals scored pretty highly. I believe East Bay was around a 72, 73, and the other LCCR was right around a 70. But we found that both of those projects would propose to supplant existing resources as the state bar staff interpret that supplementation requirement, and therefore were not recommended for funding. East Bay, both projects, East Bay and Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, are currently using unrestricted or general operating funds to support their consumer debt work and are proposing to, if they received this grant, then use that money elsewhere. And unfortunately, our reading of supplantation would not allow that, which is why those were not ultimately recommended for funding. Dwan, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that we did check our interpretation with the Office of the General Counsel, and Brady agrees with our interpretation. He's not on this meeting, but he's on call. If you have specific questions, then I can call him to come over to answer them.
And Erica, I can pause here if you, not to put you on the spot, but if you would like to add anything here, you're welcome to as well, because I know this was a conversation that was had a couple times with the scoring team.
Yeah, so I will do my best to communicate Catherine's views, which I think are stronger than mine on this. But basically, while Catherine doesn't necessarily disagree with that interpretation, she doesn't necessarily think that interpretation is a good policy going forward, just because she thinks it disincentivizes organizations from experimenting with new programs on the basis that if they use unrestricted funding, they can sort of not get, grant money later. I know we talked about this at our last XCOM meeting, and Selena had, some good explanation as to why there was sort of a push to kind of keep the supplantation language, fairly strict. But I do think it's worth sort of a conversation if we do other grants in the future. So I just wanted to make sure we communicated that sentiment. And I don't think that changes the working group's recommendations, but just wanted to, Catherine felt kind of strongly about this. So I wanted to make sure I communicated her views so that we have it on the radar and on the record for any future grants that are like this. So.
Yeah, to echo, I think the concern is around the incentives that, or disincentives really, that this policy may create for programs such that they would be hesitant to try something new with their kind of own, unrestricted funding, for the fear that they would never be able to use dedicated state bar funding to cover that in the future if this supplantation language continues to exist for discretionary funding.
Yeah. And also I think as is reflected with the two that we determined the supplantation was a barrier, we thought they were actually really good proposals otherwise, because they have experience with the program. So I think we need to just, if there's another kind of legislation, and I understand the legislature does its own thing, but something for us to kind of think about is a way to maybe allow a certain amount or something like that, so that we get people who have good experience, to maybe expand, but allow a certain amount if they've already got a program started. Anyway, just some thoughts on that. Thank you.
Of course.
Um,
Yeah, Dawn.
I just have a recommendation. If the committee does approve the slate of recommendation and the commission does that, if we go to notify East Bay Community Law Center and Lawyers Committee, Danielle, you might want to bring along a commissioner, either Eric or Catherine, because it is unusual for us to not score, not fund a project that's scored, and this is a unique circumstance, but so that we can give them, their interpretation, all the background, so they're not just getting like, we do a templated email saying that you're notified. I think maybe in this instance, we might need to reach out and have that, email them, but also reach out and have a phone call so that they understand kind of the rationale, because they'll see this high score, not really, it's in the memo, but they're not, it's because it is a little bit unusual. Okay.
Yeah, and I did some follow-up with both of these projects to make sure that our understanding of their written response to that question on supplantation was correct. I did not go so far as to say the scoring team has found that this is supplantation and therefore would not be allowable, but that flag has been raised for them, if you will. This, I unfortunately don't think will necessarily be a surprise.
Okay.
Yeah, and Selena has her hand up as well.
I was just going to say one more thing about the no supplantation. I think that was something that the legislature just started putting in. I wouldn't say like HP2, somewhere they just started putting it in. And oftentimes we fight to get it out. But when the legislature is trying to get an expansion or something new, we don't fight as hard to get it out. And this is also one of those things that just ended up in the near final budget, and we did not have a lot of opportunities to negotiate what no supplantation meant. It was it was in there. It was a gift. We were very grateful to have it, and we were surprised when it was in there. But specifically on a couple other funding sources, we have really, really talked with a lot of legislators to try to get no supplantation out. And sometimes it comes out, and sometimes they disagree with us and leave it in. But the policy point is very well taken that having no supplantation is just harder for programs.
No, I appreciate that, Selena, and I didn't mean that to be at all an implicit criticism of like your guys' lobbying work, because you guys do a great job. I just, like I said, it was something that had come up, and I told Catherine I would communicate it, since I think her views are pretty strong on this. So that's what I've done. And Danielle, if you need a commissioner to be on any of the calls, you're welcome to. I'm happy to join if that would be helpful.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Okay, great. I will keep us moving forward. So then, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Close those. So then for the 20 recommended applicants, we then had 14.25 million available for funding that needed to be split among them. And how the scoring team ultimately reached its funding recommendations is almost all of the projects, 14 of, so I guess a majority, maybe not almost all, but 14 of the 20 are being recommended to be fully funded at their full ask. But 4 projects' budgets were reduced to remove aspects of their proposal that felt either not permissible or less closely aligned with the priorities in the RFP and the permissible activities list. So 2 proposals from LA Center for Law and Justice and Senior Citizens Legal Services included a financial literacy training component, which the scoring team found really valuable, but we struggled with whether that was clearly civil legal services. And in the new definition of civil legal services, as has gone through the Rules Committee and has been approved by the Commission, that those financial literacy and financial training services can be civil legal services if they have a really clear link to know your rights work and kind of are provided in tandem, if you will. And that was not apparent in these 2 proposals that was the case. And so the scoring team is recommending budget cuts to those 2 proposals that would essentially remove that financial literacy training component. One project from Neighborhood Legal Services also included some wills and trusts work. And so they had a proposed counsel and advice, full scope rep on consumer debt, kind of like traditional consumer debt work, but then also some wills and trusts work. And the argument in the proposal, I believe, was that this would preemptively help folks avoid consumer debt in the future if you kind of set up their wills and trusts appropriately and protectively, if you will. But that didn't feel as closely aligned with the permissible activities list and kind of the spirit of this legislation as the scoring team read it. And so again, the scoring team is recommending a budget reduction that would essentially remove that component. And then finally, Western Center, which is one of the support centers, included a subgrant to QLSP, which was Inland County's Legal Services, to partner with on some of their work and their proposal. But ICLS is also, if you recall, is also being recommended for funding, and actually being recommended for funding at the max amount of 1.2 million because it was the highest scoring proposal. And the scoring team didn't feel it was appropriate for ICLS to get more than that maximum of 1.2 million. If you look at both their standalone proposal and as a subgrant under Western Center's proposal. And then the 2 lowest scoring proposals, kind of those that are recommended for funding, Santa Clara University's Law School and Legal Aid of Marin, are being recommended to get a slightly steeper budget cut because the scoring team really wanted to to fund those additional projects, but we're kind of constrained with the remaining funding available after making these budget cuts for some of those like policy reasons, if you will. So that is why those two have kind of steeper budget cuts. But I see that Amin's hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. I'm just curious about, I think I understand conceptually the idea of not going past the 1.2 for a particular QLSP, but is that going to impact, sort of taking that away from Western Center, is that going to impact the efficacy of their project to not provide the funding that they would in theory use for their grantee, for their sub grantee?
Right. So, I mean, I think it would be unfair to say no. I think it does impact their project deliverables. Western Center was proposing to provide some statewide training on consumer debt work, also work with one of their sub-grantees, and I'm sorry, I can't recall what organization it was, but I can pull it up if you all are curious, work with one of their sub-grantees to edit specific hospitals like charity care policies that were creating consumer debt issues for folks in that medical debt space, and then partner with ICLS to do some affirmative action cases in the medical debt space. And so in removing the funding that they would have kind of passed through to ICLS, it will reduce that affirmative action piece, but they would still be doing this full statewide training and kind of toolkit of resources for QLSP statewide. And they would also still be doing that hospital policy tweaking with their other state bar or their other subgrant recipient.
And is there no, sorry, I don't recall if the ICLS grant, the sort of individual one is unrelated to that.
Yes, so that is something that we wanted to double check to while we were kind of deciding how we wanted to handle this. We also wanted to make sure that ICLS didn't apply for funding basically for the same body of work under two different grants, and that did not appear to be the case. They do seem to be clearly separate bodies of work. Dawn has her hand raised.
So I just wanted to add that I know that with other discretionary grants, usually the cap, like with the Bay grant, for instance, they didn't consider. I shouldn't say they considered somewhat if you're a sub grant for another program, but they didn't always like make a cut because of that. Like they didn't include that explicitly in I mean, it's in your discretion because it's competitive, but I'm not saying you don't have to literally add that and then that's a cap. It's just, if that's, I'm understanding right. Danielle, you're not saying that you have to do that, but you're choosing to do that.
Right. I think the scoring team felt that was most fair. I don't think that there's anything in the legislation. There's certainly nothing in the legislation that requires that. I think the RFP says that the maximum grantee can apply for is 1.2, but that could be interpreted as, as the primary grantee. I think that's up for discretion. So yeah, I think it's fair game and within the committee's purview to make a different decision on that point if they choose to.
So can I just say one other thought that we sort of had is we didn't think that by cutting Western Center that prevented ICLS from doing the work with Western Center. It just wouldn't get and I think, and Danielle, correct me if I'm misstating this, but I think we sort of thought if they ultimately decided that with their 1.2, they wanted to actually use some of those funds to continue the work with Western Center to do that work that they were going to do with them. We were okay with them modifying their budget to do that work. We just were uncomfortable with giving them sort of both the full amount and a significant chunk through Western Center. So that just to kind of address some of that was sort of our thinking, was we appreciate what they want to do and the work they want to do with Western Center. We just wanted to sort of make sure there was money going to lots of different, a diverse set of organizations. So
yeah.
Can I just follow up on that last point then? So would you let them say we went back and we're going to fund them at 1.2 and they were like, we want to spend 200,000, you let them modify that budget to then say that, I mean, because they're two different projects, right? But you would let them like tack that on to their primary project?
I believe that was what we, Danielle, am I overstating that? I mean, that was
No,
my position on that, but I don't.
yeah, I think so. I will say the recommendation that we ultimately landed on was cutting kind of that full chunk that they were going to give to ICLS and just reduce it by that subgrant amount. But they're not necessarily precluded from working with ICLS on this work if they want to use the money to do that, because it's not impermissible. It's just it was a policy decision that we wanted to spread the funding. So if they want to ultimately work with ICLS and even potentially, I guess they could in theory give some of that grant to ICLS, or was that like, I think.
No. I think it's a little bit different, Danielle.
Okay.
It's basically, could ICLS take its award? And in lieu of the way it currently has one kind of consumer debt project that we approved. Whether we would find it permissible for them to allocate that amount of money that they would have gotten from Weston Center to the project of Weston Center and take it away from the project that we approved them for the maximum.
Got it. We could give ICLS the choice. If essentially you can get up to 1.2 million, you can either kind of put all of it in your standalone proposal or use some portion of it to do this work with Western Center.
Right.
Okay.
And I don't know that we sort of put that in a formal recommendation. We can confer with Catherine, but my recommendation is that we allow them to do that. But I am also open to hearing if there's concerns, because we did think that the work was important. We just wanted to make sure we were trying to maximize the number of organizations and their reach with funding. But again, this committee can change it if you want to do something different.
Right.
You know.
I think if you're gonna go in that direction, though, I think the cleanest for us, like the staff on paper, is like, if you're gonna give them that flexibility, then say they wanted to get of the 1.2 200,000. I think that their primary award should go down to 1 million, and then you should tack on that 200 to the other project. It's just cleaner when we get audited, because if not, then we modify the original audit. It's incongruent, right? Because it's not part of that project. Then I think we should do it like by the book. But that's just my recommendation.
Okay. That's something that, if the committee wishes to go that route, I think that's something I can get clarification from ICLS on between now and the commission meeting when this ultimately needs to get approved.
I guess my only other comment on that is, I think it's probably something for us to consider as a policy, whether this is how we want to approach or how we should generally approach these funding, discretionary funding caps, so to speak, because I think that's, this could have broader or more far-reaching ramifications, and I think that's probably something for us to have some consistency on, or some agreement on, that being the way that we approach this. It would be clean, it would be easy, hopefully, to be able to say that across the board. I'm curious that kind of what the guidance is on that. Like, in other words, what is the intention of that cap? Is it really based on project, or is it based on, group or entity?
It's a good point.
This was fully subscribed, which I guess I would just note, like, one thing we found in the last round of the HP funding is that we didn't get grants applications in excess of the amount offered. I note that because it just it suggests that this is an area of some ongoing need, especially given the fact that we've got a couple of organizations that might well have, a way to correct the reason for their not being funded this time. So, just to move things along, I don't know if there's other comments on this point. or on anything that we've been discussed in the last few minutes? Danielle, anything you want to add, or Erica or me?
I guess I want to sort of ask is like, I mean, is your view that like we should change that, given that we have not sort of put this cap on in other circumstances as stridently or as rigidly?
Yeah, I don't know that I have strong feelings about whether we should change course. I just want to make sure that we're being consistent, because I think that's, you know, that's where there could be obviously friction, is if we are being inconsistent. And I think I'm curious, kind of I know that, you know, I'm just kind of curious, like if there is more, you know, are our hands tied such that this is the result that needs to be the case, or is this something that we are deciding to exercise as a matter of our discretion and our policy?
Yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead, Dawn. Sorry.
I was gonna say, yeah, so we don't have a firm policy on how we've interpreted the cap, whether it's project or organization. I know that, like, I mean, because you and I were on the bank grants committee together, they didn't enforce like the strict cap for the organization. They took it into consideration. That's why I said it wasn't like done completely in a vacuum, but they didn't do this like, you know, 1.2, so we're not going to consider you for another sub grant. Sometimes if they were like sub grants of multiple, then I think they might have shaved off a little bit. I don't know if they ever really cut off completely. It's inconsistent. So I would say, and then we don't spell it out in the RFP. So I think that like this committee and the commission has discretion to interpret it. I do think the consistency though, I mean, I take your point, and there is that discretionary grants working group that's coming out of codification. I think you're on it, I mean, working with Crystal. That memo hasn't quite been finalized. I wonder if we can, you're probably going to be, that work group is going to probably need to meet once or twice more before it goes in March to the rules committee. So I wonder if we can tack this on and put a pin in it, like make a recommendation and then have the committee consider it, and then we'll have that consistency.
I mean, if the goal is to be consistent with other discretionary grants, like we can just change the funding, you know. So a little context, neither Catherine nor I have been on any of the discretionary grant things. So we're sort of both coming to this a little bit fresh and sort of had this like, there's a 1.2 million kind of cap. And we think like an organization, we understand there's different projects, but it seemed like in an effort to kind of, you know, spread the fertilizer, as it were, we thought, you know, sort of having that cap was a good way to, as it was a good guidance for us to kind of decide to move further down. But having said that, I'm not so, I think if you feel that it is fairer for us to instead, you know, fund them, I don't have a clean way to like reduce their award, you know, otherwise, like the.
I mean, sorry.
Yeah, please. No.
I think, look, I think, you know, obviously there's a defined limited set of funds. And I think there are different ways of kind of getting the grants and the awards to fit within that funding. And so I don't have any, you know, personally, I don't think there's a problem with using that as a factor in determining that. The question that though is, you know, if how we communicate that is, this is sort of a bright line that we're drawing, that this cap is the cap for per organization. I just want to make sure the communication on that we let out there is clear. That, you know, that may either that's a factor, or, you know, given the whole, you know, the totality of the circumstances and how much funding we had, we thought this was an appropriate way of allocating the funds, or making the recommendations and providing the funding. So I think it's something that's worth exploring to see if there is. And look, personally, my view is more flexibility is always better as our funding body generally. So I'm not suggesting that we should have a bright line rule to that effect, but I do think it's worth exploring, and I think it'll be good for us to do that through the rules committee process.
Yeah. I mean, one other, just sorry to like keep us going on this, but one other option that we considered, but ultimately decided we didn't think this was a very fair, I guess, is we had considered, giving Western Center the funding and just saying they had to find a different sub-grantee to do the work. But, the issue, of course, is then you essentially give them like they can kind of do a new application essentially. And we were trying to kind of stick to what was on the application, was sort of my reasoning on that. So, I can't remember, Danielle, if there's a clean way if we wanted to switch up the funding. I don't think so, because I think the next one down is like 700 and then the one below, it's a little bit confusing, the amounts versus the scores. So it's not like to like just divert the money and then you just not fund one of the lower ones.
Yeah, I think that's an option. And once we kind of get to I think it's the next slide on funding recommendations, I have a spreadsheet that if you all want to make edits to the numbers, we can play with numbers as long as you'd like. But yeah, it the math quickly gets messy, but happy to do that.
Yeah, I don't, go ahead. Sorry, go on.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I think your rationale is like perfectly reasonable. And I think, it maybe if we want to go back and just give them that flexibility of if they want to divert some of the 1.2 to the Western Central project, I think that might solve it. And then when we go through rules committee, we can think about like the consistency issue. I think that's a separate, related, but separate.
I mean,
I don't think you need to tackle the consistency because that's a codification topic. And that usually is like, you have to think about everything. I don't know if we're going to be able to do now in this meeting.
So I guess the question is, for your audit purposes, it sounds as if maybe the cleaner way to do it is to go back to Western Center and Inland and basically say, look, in order to, as a funding pure policy, not a cap, we wanted to spread the love. So we're doing, we're going to give you 1.2. Why don't you guys negotiate which one you want it to go towards, and then we'll kind of amend the awards appropriately. Would that be okay? Does that sort of feel comfortable for you?
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. I think I don't want to hold up that decision. I like the idea of kind of letting them be a part of that process.
Okay.
Chris, are you okay with that too, that approach? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also mindful that Western Center was, sort of in mind, or,
Well, yeah.
So
there's been some other issues, so that also is a wrinkle in all of this.
Yeah, no, it's a relevant one. So I don't. Yeah. I mean, I have great affection for Western Center, and so it's not intended to be, a dig or anything. But yeah, those are things that we are charged with considering. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that would be I would be comfortable with doing that. I mean, I think that was what we sort of had discussed. And I think also part of the rationale, not just, we want people to get these programs off the ground, and giving more funding to more organizations can help them get those off the ground and build expertise more broadly. So as a broader policy justification for this particular type of decision, that would be what else I would say additionally is, it's not quite a pilot program, but we're trying to sort of encourage that. That's why it's expansion fun, or encouraging expansion. Anyway, sorry.
Great. No, please don't apologize. That was helpful discussion. Okay, I will keep us moving forward unless anybody else has any other thoughts or questions at this point. Great. So given the funding recommendations as proposed in the memo, organizations would receive on average 92% of their budget request. And that's because, again, the majority of them would be fully funded. And I followed up with each of the grantees that would, each of those 6 that would be receiving less than requested, and have kind of a rough sense of how their deliverables would need to change if they receive that recommended amount. For the projects that the budget cuts were made in such a way that we were envisioning they would kind of just pull out this piece that was less clearly qualifying, that is what they proposed to do. And then Santa Clara Law School, the changes sorry, I just want to make sure I get this right. It would slightly reduce the number of full scope rep cases that they're doing. But the vast majority of the services they were providing were actually clinic services, and those services would not decrease or would decrease very slightly. Actually, I think they said from 150 appointments annually to 148. So that seemed reasonable. And then legal aid of Marin, they would hire a legal assistant instead of an attorney to do much of the work there. And they would also reduce, they have a sub-grant relationship with Community Action Marin, I believe is the name of the organization. But they indicated that that's a pretty well-funded organization. And so they could probably reduce some of their sub-grant to that organization, and it wouldn't dramatically impact kind of the work being done there. So even though those were kind of the steeper budget cuts, the cuts in deliverables seemed very reasonable on first read.
Danielle, I thought actually, sorry, I thought they were below a cut line. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Got it, okay.
Great. And if you have follow-up questions either now or later, kind of in the nitty-gritty of those adjusted deliverables, happy to discuss that. So then to put the numbers in front of you, among the 20 recommended proposals, they requested about 15.6 million total. Again, there's 14.25 million available, which meant we needed to cut about a little less than 1.4. And so where those cuts came from, again, were the 4 proposals that had aspects that seemed less qualifying or would put ICLS over the 1.25 million or $1.2 million maximum. And then those kind of steeper budget cuts to the lowest 2 that we wanted to extend funding towards.
This is a weird observation. So I just want to make sure. So the part of what my eye caught on legal aid of Marin is because the materials are different than your slide. The materials posted on the web say 66.5 for legal aid of Marin, so it's just off by one point.
Got it.
Marin should be 65.5.
Okay.
In the materials.
Got it. Okay, let me, I can double check the spreadsheet. I'm sorry about that. Let me I can confirm for you.
In the memo, Chris, is that what you're saying? In the memo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be pedantic about it. The only reason
No.
I mention it is because sometimes that could be from a cut and paste, and I want to make sure the math actually adds up, which I did.
Yes. Yeah, so I have the spreadsheet in front of me, and legal aid of Marin is at 65.5. I can also share this spreadsheet if
it's
you'd
okay.
like to see it. But
no,
well, it's
Danielle, that 360,000 on Western, that's the sub-grant to ICS. That's 360. Their sub-grant to okay, it was 360.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, so Santa Clara was at 66, and then legal aid of Marin was at 65.5. So then the cut score would be, I guess, the 60. Those scoring above 65 are those that are funded. So I'll make sure to update that in the memo. I apologize for the discrepancy.
All good.
Okay, so let's stop sharing this and go back to the slides. Yeah, and so it's correct here. I'll just need to update the memo before it goes to the full commission. So taken together, these 20 recommended projects propose or articulate a clear nexus to consumer debt matters affected by COVID-19 pandemic. They propose strong impact as indicated by their project impact scores. They would together serve every county because there are 2 support center projects that would propose to serve individuals statewide. But they would focus on 42 counties in particular, which you can see in, I'm sorry, this is attachment D, which is also on the next slide. And it also balances QLSPs and support centers. 18 projects would be QLSP projects and 2 support center projects. And then here is the map of where those projects are, the counties that those projects seek to serve, again, in addition to the 2 statewide proposals. Okay, so now is where I had kind of a point of pause. If there's any additional discussion or consideration, I can pull up. Maybe this is the most helpful place to sit if you all have any thoughts. Okay, I am not hearing any.
Nope.
So the next slide is the resolution. And this says, resolve that the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission Executive Committee recommends the following 2023-2025 consumer debt grant recipients and amounts.
Do we
And-
want to add the stuff about Western Center versus ICLS? Or do we not need to actually put that in the resolution? I'm just concerned because if we end up changing the awards based on them wanting to do things differently.
The full commission, you mean? Or no, I'm not tracking your question, Erica.
Right now, this is the recommendation is that ICLS will get 1.2 million
Hmm.
and that Western Center will get 840,000.
Mhm.
Are we still, and what Dawn said was it would be cleaner if ICLS would prefer to do the sub-grant work, that it should actually just get the sub-grant from Western Center, which means we would be changing to awards. So I'm just suggesting we may want to put something like that in the resolution so that when it goes to the commission, if we need to change those, we have that flexibility, because right now we're recommending the awards as is.
Yeah, I think you're right, Erica. We need to just put some flexible language, Danielle. So that when you work, then you can, it's because the thing is the spreadsheet's going to look different. Say if ICLS takes a smaller than 1.2, that to the version of the commission, it's not going to match, and that's a problem.
right, so the two that would potentially change here are ICLS and Western Center.
Right,
So
but-
it's a matter of how we want to.
I guess I'm not. I get the thing that I'm not. So when it gets to the full commission, the commission will be able to approve or just change. The commission is just relying on the recommendation. So to the extent that
I see what you're saying. So basically make the change at the commission
Okay.
meeting rather than now.
well, unless we know for sure, but I guess I wasn't sure that we knew for sure today, right now. We don't.
We don't.
We don't.
So I would, my recommendation would be that we approve this
Okay.
as is. And then on the full commission agenda, we just have a report out to amend by the full commission amend the recommendation based on developments since the last meeting, which we were aware of, but didn't have final numbers, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, that's fine with me. I just wanted to make sure we were being appropriate on all of that.
You said since you'll be explaining it at the full commission meeting.
Exactly. I was like, oh.
You have the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I hope, I hope we're not putting Western Center and Inland in too much of an awkward position with them trying to negotiate that, but if that's another call that needs to happen with a commissioner on the call, Danielle,
Well, I think the call should be with inland counties and not with inland counties and Western Center.
sure.
It's probably to avoid the awkwardness because it's their call, right? It's ICLS.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think so as well.
Yeah, that's fine. But again, if you need a commissioner to join that call, I will put myself out there and we'll give my explanation as to why we wanted to seed more organizations to build this work.
I appreciate the offer. Thank you.
Okay.
There's like no winning on these. You were giving it all this money and I still feel like, bad.
Oh, I mean, yeah, please don't.
I know.
I'm like telling people how to feel,
It's
but
my first time doing it. So
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, sorry.
no.
The ones that aren't getting all the money that they want. I wish we had all the money in the world.
No, you guys did great. It's really thoughtful. It's
And I think the other thing is I mean, I'm not sure as a public policy matter, like there's a great need here. I mean, in my practice, I see it all the time, but you know, this is a stretch for some legal services organizations to do such focused consumer work. So it's good. It feels to me like we're ready to go. Selena?
I apologize for the distractions. My neighbor's cats are in my yard and causing a lot of conflict. But I wanted to say that because this was publicly posted, I shared this list with Ted Merman over at the California Low Income Consumer Coalition. He coordinates a lot of legal aid programs who are doing consumer debt work. And so we are talking about how to connect these organizations with each other, especially if they're planning to create resources, or if they're creating new materials that could potentially need to be translated into other languages. So now when the work starts in January, we're already figuring out how there can be some continuity of helping by the experts. So hopefully these programs can continue to be funded with future unrestricted dollars, or maybe future money from the legislature.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'm very encouraged to hear that, actually. Just even having a brief bank, you know, among the organizations would be extremely efficient because the demand so far outstrips the supply. But the other thing that makes me think of is that, and I don't know quite how they would slot in here, but basically Judicial Council, I hope, is kind of tracking this to see where some efficiencies might be, you know, brought to bear at the courts, or at least identifying where some inefficiencies are, because I think it's sort of an area potentially even for a partnership grant down the road. And one thing that I could sort of see happening is if there are any sort of bottlenecks or any issues that judicial councils that are bubbling up in the sort of universe of judicial council, that could be then communicated out very efficiently through TED and through that network.
I'll keep that in mind. I also didn't see a lot of mentions of the Attorney General. I didn't read everything like y'all did. I just did find and page. And I know that the Central Valley Legal Aid programs meet with Ted Merman and with their local AG representatives around some of these consumer issues. And so I'm just kind of wondering if there's a future project with what all of these organizations learn in this grant to work with their local AG's office around consumer debt issues. Because only one organization had identified that as a future partnership, and there could be something really good there.
So Selena, are you thinking like that they can kind of go to, when you say their local partner, you mean like the SF office, the SAC office, the LA office? Yeah, we have our public inquiry unit. Again, I'm speaking as a commissioner, not as the AG, but I will say, you know, I do know people in the consumer section. So if that is some connections that I can help with, I'm happy to do that.
I'll keep that in mind because I know I'm going to try to attend the next Central Valley gathering of the legal aid folks and the AG's folks. So I'll just keep in mind like what they're talking about and if should be fruitful conversations in the next 3 years.
Yeah, I know the AG's been doing they have this kind of new outreach program for the public and to sort of educate people about how they can come to the AG's office for resources and stuff. And that might be a good point of contact with the legal aid communities to kind of share in that way. But yeah, no reason to reinvent the wheel every time.
No, especially because there's going to be, I mean, with like Bay Legal is going to have some sophisticated materials, I would say. And, you know, given that they're getting you know, just looking at this list, you know, all of the organizations that are getting max money, they're going to be pretty well prepared, I think, to sort of do very, very clean, good work and to develop materials that will be really useful to some of the smaller organizations that are getting some of this money.
Yes, and I think actually a lot of the applications included like know your rights videos. A lot of materials were part of the applications that they were planning to produce. So I think you're absolutely right. Like not only for the lawyer side, but things that can be easily handed out to clinics and stuff. So yeah, definitely.
We already plan to reach out to anyone who mentions creating resources or materials that are public facing to include it on Law Help California. So that's already on our radar.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it sort of turns these QLSPs into service centers sort of unwittingly, but it's okay. That's, I think, a good use of.
I think the having special consideration points targeted at replicability and sustainability beyond the grant period really pushed QLSPs to think about what types of resources they can develop, both for their staff internally and kind of building up internal capacity, but then also those external facing materials and know your rights documents.
Can I just make one observation for you, Selena? And this is something that just I'm seeing in my own practice, but one, and this doesn't have like an action item attached to it, but one of the challenges in doing consumer debt work is, among many, is paperwork. And because so many businesses have gone paperless, it provides sort of an opportunity, but also a challenge to the extent that that certain paperwork is available. And I'm not really sure sort of how to deploy that fact more usefully, because in spite of the fact that people don't have to have literal physical paper with them anymore, we have really pretty distinct challenges in getting people access to their accounts. And it does, I'm not sure how to articulate this. It's a way it seems to me like there's a way for our new paperless world to be used in a consumer friendly way, just to put together a record. And yet we are not able to sort of do that. And I guess I'd be interested to hear if the community has ideas about this, because there seems to be like a way to put together a consumer file so much more easily than it used to be. And yet we still run into major headaches getting old accounts, having businesses, retain the records or provide them, et cetera. So anyway, it's just something I've been thinking about and wonder whether the broader community that Ted is looking at or in contact with has sort of thought about. So anyway.
I'll email Ted, because we email all the time, to see if he has some brilliant ideas from his folks, because he gathers people so frequently that I think they do talk about these kind of issues that are systemic issues.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so we have a resolution on the screen. Any further comment? Can we take action on that and do a vote?
Sure. I'll make the motion if there's no other discussion.
Great, I'll second.
Sorry, roll call. Okay. Schreiber?
Yep.
Alsaroff?
Yes.
Connolly?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank
All
you
right.
all for the thoughtful discussion.
When do we need to post the materials for the Trust Fund Commission meeting?
It's usually a week before.
So that would be the 6th, which is next Tuesday.
Yeah.
So Danielle, can we connect about talking to Inland before then?
Yes, absolutely.
My schedule's relatively flexible the next week or two.
Okay, wonderful.
Danielle, I don't know if this is yours or if this is something, Dwan, you were going to take, but this is the report.
Yeah, it's Danielle as well.
Yep, just stuck it in the same
Okay.
PowerPoint. Seemed
Yeah.
easiest.
Yeah, great.
Great. Okay, so the next item, I'll preface this by saying, Dwan, correct me if this is wrong. I don't think we need a formal vote or action on this. This is just a discussion to get your all sense of reporting requirements in this space. Great. So I'll quickly go through some background, kind of why we're asking you this, and then talk about the State Bar staff's recommendation based on conversations both internally and with Judicial Council, and then we'll open it up for your discussion as well. But of course, stop me at any point. So as a reminder, these consumer debt grants are funded through the Equal Access Fund, so they are state-funded grants. And budget language now requires that the State Bar annually provide to the Judicial Council a report that includes funding allocations, annual expenditures, and program outcomes by service area and service provider for all EAF and federally funded grants. And the budget language also says that that data shall be reported using the established reporting framework in the Equal Access Program, including applicable outcome measures, reported in legal services standardized reporting, state level performance measures, and main benefit scores. So all of that to say, grants funded by EAF or federal sources, the State Bar needs to report to the Judicial Council on those annually. And the State Bar and Judicial Council have talked through what this report will look like, and also State Bar is working on or will hand over the first of these reports in the coming days or weeks. I think that process is ongoing. But State Bar and Judicial Council envision kind of moving forward one report which would have individual sections of reporting and data analysis per State Bar grant. So the consumer debt portion as an EAF funded grant would be kind of one piece of this broader report to JC. And then in thinking about what kind of data we want to collect from the grantees for the consumer debt grants, there's kind of two approaches that the State Bar has taken in the past that vary in kind of the depth of data and analysis required both of the grantees and of State Bar staff. So federally funded State Bar grants, HP3 and CalHFA, have really in-depth reporting that captures client demographics, geographic information, those economic benefits, legal resolution codes on the individual case level or even at the main benefit code level. And I have a screenshot of the next slide that will illuminate what that means if that's unclear. Alternatively, most of the state-funded State Bar grants, so IOLTA, EAF, partnership grants, we ask that that data be reported in the aggregate. And so they're still reporting, grantees are still reporting client demographics, all their main benefits, economic benefits, the legal resolution, their depth of service, but it's not at the case or client level necessarily. And so what that looks like, this is admittedly a wild looking spreadsheet, but CalHFA reporting, and this is even actually, I removed a couple columns so it would fit on the slide, but essentially, this is just to demonstrate that for every single main benefit, so every single goal or outcome of the service, the grantees put in a different row of data. They give us the client ID so we can see if a single client received more than one benefit or type of service. And then for every single service provided, they have to give us location information, client demographic information, the economic benefits, and the legal resolution or depth of service. So it is very granular, which allows for really interesting and in-depth data analysis, but is a very heavy lift for the grantees to do this. But this is the type of data collection that they're doing for both HP3 and their CalHFA federally funded grants. Alternatively, and these screenshots are a little small, so I apologize, but for EAF, this is what the mid-year EAF reporting structure looked like. And you'll see the kind of granular data here is not as important, but I just wanted to show you what the structure looks like for all cases closed that were EAF funded. They give us demographics and age, but a total. So the total number of white individuals aged 18 to 59 that were clients. Similarly, with the different legal resolutions or these are areas of legal resolutions, they're giving us the depth of service. And so we can see how many of those cases were negotiated settlements with litigation, without litigation, extensive services, etc. They're providing the same data points, but it's in a kind of more summarized fashion. And then again, for each individual main benefit code, this is just the immigration kind of subset. They're providing in aggregate the economic benefits achieved. So it's still, again, the same kind of types of data, but summarized. And so in thinking about how we want to collect data for the consumer debt grants, staff would recommend that the consumer debt grant reporting more closely align with our EAF reporting, such that the grantees would report more aggregated demographic information, main benefits, outcomes, and economic benefits that would use the EAF, kind of existing EAF reporting structure as required by the Budget Act of 2022. That's not to say that this committee or the commission could not ask for more reporting beyond what is required of EAF, but it would kind of meet the threshold requirement, if you will, that it match current EAF reporting structure as required by the Budget Act. It would allow for slightly less data analysis. For example, with the federal data, because it's so granular, we can look at the depth of service or legal resolution by those demographic categories, or we can look at the economic benefits in a specific county, for example. And doing this more summarized analysis would not necessarily lend itself to that. But it would also require much less data collection and cleaning by the grantees than their federal reporting requires. So again, State Bar staff would recommend that the consumer debt grant reporting look more like EAF than the federal reporting, but that didn't feel like a decision staff could unilaterally make, which is why we wanted to get your all sense as the overseeing committee for this grant. So last slide here is literally just the discussion slide.
And I'll just add.
Can you go back one slide though? Just
of course.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll just add the administrative costs for both programs and for the staff to do it on the individual line item. It's a heavy lift, and that's part of the reason why we thought this is only $15 million. We will certainly do it if the commission desires that information, but it's a lot of work for both us and programs, and that's why we thought with 15 million reporting in the aggregate, it's still a lot of rich information, might be appropriate. And then once you see the HP data, you might change your mind, but I think for at this juncture that's our recommendation.
I mean, it seems like that's easier on programs.
Yeah, they would have. We haven't checked with them, but I'm confident that they'd rather report in the aggregate, because it's like I said, some programs have hired extra staff to do the data input for it.
I'm just wondering, like, if one question that comes to mind is, if all this reporting and all this data is being collected and we continue to have like a rubric in which we give points for grants based on like analysis, or I can't even remember what's the category called, but like
Evaluation.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, don't these two things kind of begin to merge pretty wholly? Anyway, I don't know if anybody has thoughts. Go ahead, Eric.
So yeah, first off, I'll echo what you said, Chris. Like, one of the things we noticed in the applications that we did was there was a lot of evaluation stuff, but that was stuff they already had to do. So it's really hard for them to go like above and beyond, without the money sort of getting diverted. One question I do want to ask, just for my full understanding, I also am inclined to support doing it in the aggregate, but do we have any sense of why the feds like doing it on a case level? Like, is there a benefit on the data? And like, what would that benefit be?
I'll speak to CalHFA because I have more understanding of that program than HP3. But for CalHFA, I know, for example, they're using this data, particularly on like client location and demographics, to ensure that every single client is in fact eligible for services. So there are requirements that they be located in certain areas, or that they spend 40% of the grant on folks in socially disadvantaged communities. So they want to be able to see for every single service and every single client who was in a socially disadvantaged community. And so that is one benefit.
It's a controls thing, not a,
Well, I think for CalPHA, it is, I don't know if that's the same, the HP
Yeah.
has controls, but I think it's more than that, at least for HP and some of the other federal funding. Like, if you're able to do it on an individual basis, we track it by zip code. So you can really zero it in and say, in this county, we serve this amount of clients, and this is the demographics. And at Treasury, that all gets, it gets input, and so they can zero in on California state, within California, the 52 counties. It gives them a lot of data points.
yeah.
We wouldn't be able to do that in the aggregate. You can't say in Alpine, we helped this many clients versus like in an urban county. We can't make that kind of cross comparison. So that's what we lose. So
Mhm.
yeah.
There's no way to split the difference, like have them add by county, but not have them do like, because I remember I've been pro bono, I've done the clinics and I've had to fill these out, and it sucks. So I'm not interested in that, but I'm not supporting that. I'm just kind of curious.
Well, we would have to
Not
create
benchmarks at
a
all.
new, if we go into like that middle, like
Oh, you have to do a new.
we have to think about like how to do that.
Okay, no,
I'm not
no,
saying
that's-
you
Yeah.
can't, but
That's what I wanted to know. Yeah, I'm not, if that's a lot of work, like we don't have, I'm not gonna suggest that. I was just curious.
I mean, you're gonna see before you in the next, the December commission meeting and then the March commission meeting, a lot of data, because we're finally, I think I reported last, we're finally finished our HP reporting, our EF reporting. So I think the commission will, in the next few months, have all the data
Mhm.
and then nicely package and report. And then the staff's gonna have some suggestions on what we can do with the data. But I think once you have the data, and if this is what you want to pivot to more HP data, we can make that happen in the long term. I mean, at some point, it's even if you go with, the aggregate now for consumer, and you change your mind in a few years after this, we can do that. It's just, we think now, when it's
No,
only
that-
15
I mean,
million.
That all makes sense to me.
A heavy
I was just kind of curious. I don't know to what extent.
But we could do that, save the commit, that's what the direction the commission wants to go in for all the grants or part of the grants. We can certainly design something. We just haven't done that yet.
Yeah,
Erica,
no,
I don't know exactly what that would look like.
I'm just thinking not for this, but longer term, it's something that we should think about, because I think that kind of data potentially can be helpful when we're like asking for money and sort of seeing what the results of it is, but maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know.
I mean, that's what we've been told. And I think that's why with HP data, and because we give out so much HP data, I mean, it's over 100 million, that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
You might get some like
Totally.
legislative stakeholders that will come and ask. I think they will once we have, and we were gonna have it, that say, so I serve these counties, can you tell me with your funding, how many people you helped? I think that's valuable, but
Yeah, longer term, I think it's something with bigger grants and stuff that's worth thinking about, because it can also be a resource, not just for the commission, but, for a legal service community, organizations and that kind of stuff. Those kind of reports can be helpful. But yeah, it makes sense to me to do the aggregate in this setting. I don't want them to spend their money on
I
this.
know. It's such a tension, right? It's such a tension between what might be useful, but versus what's really cumbersome, and then frankly, not only cumbersome, but also sort of discouraging the
Yeah.
uptake of the services. So, I don't know, I'm of such two minds here, but it is certainly the case that we are like pushing out what is being pushed down, because I don't think if we were starting from scratch, we would necessarily do this, but a lot of this is just consistent with what they're already doing, for other funders. Anyway, go ahead, Selena.
I 100% agree with State Bar staff recommendation to have simplified reporting, because I have heard from several organizations that the HP funding reporting is just very onerous and it's really hard to do. But I did want to add that LAC has been expanding our evaluation and research work. We have a page on our website about research and studies that are out there, and we're doing some technical assistance, which is largely around if you, organization X, want to prove that there's X outcome for your clients, here's what you ask at intake, here's what you ask at case closure. And so even if they're not reporting it to the bar, we are like getting organizations to start asking different questions and build it into their intake system on the front end. So, and Zach is the lead on that project at LAC. We're also talking, of course, to Bonnie because she's our research expert. But we're hoping that organizations, even if they don't need to report all this to the bar, that they are asking themselves these questions, especially on this grant.
Great. We don't need to approve this, but the question I had is whether this has to go to the full commission.
You have an agenda item, Danielle, on the commission.
I had it as an agenda item to have essentially the same discussion at that level and get additional thoughts. But I don't think it necessarily needs to be approved at the commission level
I think at the commission level, it needs, the reason I don't think it needs to be approved at this level is because isn't in the RFP, the commission already approved that it's being consistent with the Budget Act. So this is consistent. I think if you were gonna require them to be more granular, then I think the committee needs to formally then take action and then but I think to be safe, the commission probably needs but we're not being inconsistent though, right? Because the RFP already puts that out there that we're asking for reporting requirements in line with the Budget Act.
Yeah, I think if we were to depart from staff structure,
Exactly.
we're needing some sort of an act.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the commission couldn't act contrary to the Budget Act in any event. So
or add requirements. So say you're gonna this committee, like you didn't agree with Danielle and I, and you wanted to make more, then I think then the commission that we would need to have.
Right. Okay. Okay. Danielle, anything else on this one?
No, I believe that's it.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Dwan, do you have a CARES Act update?
Yes, I do. Just a really brief update. We sent out an informal survey to the programs that are in the seven cohort 1 counties, as well as the 22 support centers, to get a gauge of how many programs would opt in for the planning grants. The survey doesn't close until today or tomorrow, and 9 programs have said yes. And then next week, we're actually going to release the planning grant application, the opt-in form. So we expect probably somewhere in that 9, maybe a dozen, and then we'll move forward and kind of releasing the money, and everything is on track right now.
Okay. One question that had sort of just like nagged at me a little, is there any, I mean, there's probably an expectation, but I don't know if it's formal in any way, that somebody getting a planning grant actually go forward?
No, there's not an expectation. We've actually said explicitly that even if you don't plan on providing representation in that county, but you want to be involved in shaping it, then please do apply for planning grants. Because we know, for example, like Legal Services of Northern California, they want to participate, but they know they don't want to provide services.
Got it. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Okay. Anything else on your mind? Team? Pam? We good? All right. Thanks to the Consumer Debt Committee and to staff, who's over here for me, but may not be for you. So thank you, Danielle, and thanks, Dwan, for just overseeing that. It's exciting, and I think that's going to be good work and much needed. And so that's great. Happy to be getting that money out the door.
Thank you, everyone. And we have one more, the commission meeting on December 13th, and that'll be our last meeting of the year. So
I do, maybe. All right, great. Nice to see everybody. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Take care.
Adjourned.